Welcome to P Guru's channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. Today we have with us Professor M.D. Nalapat, and we are going to talk with him on various topics that have geopolitical implications. First, we'll start with price of petrol at the pump. Professor Nalapat, you can see that the crude price is on its steady ascent now, and it's crossed 75 or so, and it's headed probably even higher. And it appears that the whole thing started with the United States turning its back on the Iran nuclear deal, because the direct implication of that would be that the sanctions will be put back on Iran, and therefore Iran's supply of crude to the global market will go down. Ergo, the supply goes down, demand stays the same, and therefore the prices have to go up. What is your take on this, sir? How do you see this play out?
Well, I simply want to say that I think the Trump administration is following the same strategy as the Bush administration, which is nudging petrol prices up through creating geopolitical hotspots. Now, both with Russia and with Iran, apart from Venezuela, for example. So they are basically ensuring that the geopolitical situation, now I think the Trump administration calculates that this will help Saudi Arabia, it will help its friends in the Middle East, it will of course help the United States significantly, because the United States is now going to become a net exporter and a very big exporter of oil. And at the same time, the US can, through sanctions, ensure that Iran, Russia, and Venezuela do not get too much advantage from this rise in the price of oil. So whatever advantage they get will be brought back to zero through sanctions and other constraints placed on them by the Trump administration. So I think this is a strategy of nudging oil prices up through creating geopolitical hotspots. The only problem is this is bad for India, it's bad for Japan, it's bad for Europe. It's good for the United States in the short run, but it's very bad for these three geopolitical sectors.
What about China?
Well, China is also badly affected by this. There's no doubt about it. China, of course, that again, the Trump administration will be happy because it sends prices up in China. It removes it, for some extent, it lowers the competitive edge of China. So it will benefit America. But again, I would like to say this is short run. So what the Trump administration seems to be doing is following a policy of a Wall Street trader. Immediate profits. Who cares for the future? Let's make the profit now and then let the future look after itself. I think they're doing that for the entire global economy so far the US is concerned.
So that probably explains why North Korea seems to have turned back its decision to not do any nuclear development. Perhaps China went back to North Korea and said, "Listen, you go back and rattle your saber one more time." And as a direct consequence of that, today Trump has announced that the 12th June meeting in Singapore has been turned off. Do you see it the way I do, sir?
Well, I'd like to say that I've been following North Korea for some time, and I've been writing quite a bit on the Supreme Leader and his thinking. And I'd like to say that it's a fantasy to believe that he's going to give up his nuclear weapons, that he's going to give up his delivery systems. It is only in Hollywood, in a Hollywood movie, that he would do that, not in real life. And if I may say so, John Bolton ensured that, and Vice President Mike Pence ensured that by basically talking about Libya. Libya is the nightmare of the North Korean Supreme Leader. I believe he's watched that video of Gaddafi's final moments several times. So you're bringing up that particular figure, I think was absolutely psychologically the wrong thing to do. But I think, both Mr. Bolton and Vice President Pence, by bringing up Libya, made certain that Kim Jong-un would have the highest level of suspicion and mistrust about the so-called Singapore summit. But now, if he had cancelled it, it would have made Trump look like the nice guy. In global opinion, it would have been Kim Jong-un who's the bad guy, who basically will not go the extra mile for peace. And Trump is the good guy, willing to go the extra 10 miles for peace. So the US is bigger than North Korea. But by Trump canceling it, it's the US now that's cast as the obstacle to peace. And Kim Jong-un becomes the good guy. I was ready to meet this chap. I was ready to go all the way to Singapore for the first time, since my father and my grandfather's time. I'm ready to go out of the country or out of a railway carriage. But no, the American president has said no. So the responsibility is on the American president. I think, frankly, if it was a trap that the North Koreans were setting, President Trump has walked right into it.
Interesting perspective there, Professor Nalapad. How does all this tie in with the two quiet visits that Mr. Narendra Modi took, first to China and then to Russia? Was there a sequence? There was a reason for the sequence? And much has been said about what actually has been agreed to or was talked about in these two meetings. Can you please brief us on what your thoughts are on these two meetings?
Well, I'd like to say the way the meetings took place is itself, if I may say so, a statement. Without anything else being revealed, it's itself a statement. The reality of the situation is that, India cannot put all its cards in the US basket. They cannot become like Japan or South Korea, a kind of a treaty ally of the US, and thereby forgo independence of action vis-a-vis the Russia and China. Don't forget that there is something called the India-Russia-China triangle. And in this triangle, the Chinese are very keen on reviving it now. The Russians are very keen on reviving it. It's been India that has been a bit reluctant. So Modi is signaling that, look, he is open for business with China and Russia as he is with the United States. Now, the difficulty here is that he's going to, basically, he's going to do incremental, progress on all three fronts and therefore displease all three countries. I think that is more likely than basically enabling a smooth balancing of the relationship between these three countries.
Now, India signed some accords with Iran in terms of developing the Chabahar port and also building the infrastructure of their refineries, which have actually grown old. And now those accords, are they also in danger if sanctions are put back on Iran? Would India also be forced to toe the line?
Well, the mullahs in Tehran ought to keep a golden statue of President Trump in the center of Tehran because he has saved them. I've been to Iran multiple times. Frankly, the people there have nothing in common with the mullahs. And they're sick and tired of the mullahs and their interference in every aspect of Iranian life. Now, if the United States and the West had freely dealt with Iran, if they had ensured much more contact with Iran, I believe that would have strengthened Iranian civil society much more and led to the kind of regime modifications. I'm not going to call it regime change because that's an ugly word these days. Regime modifications that now that Trump is talking about. The reality is that what India is doing is very simple. One, we have got a Wahhabi front of terror. We don't want a Shia front of terror. And we have seen, for example, what's happening to Israel, that if you have Shia terror, it's even more deadly than Wahhabi terror. Point one. Point number two, the treaty ally of the United States, Pakistan, will not allow us to go through Pakistan to Central Asia and Afghanistan. Iran does. So we open, with the only route we have, frankly, to these countries by rail and by road is through Iran, not through Pakistan. The third factor is, of course, oil. We need oil very much. And Iran is a major supplier of that oil. So for all these different reasons, frankly, Iran and a relationship with Iran is non-negotiable so far as India is concerned. And I thought the United States had been clear on that, and even Israel, because neither Netanyahu nor Trump said anything when the Chabahar port was open.
Now, but I think the essential question, India should continue to deliver on its commitments with Iran and perhaps expect oil in exchange. I don't know. I think that was one of the understanding that was done, that it is like infrastructure for oil. Uh,
Quite right. Quite right.
so that would probably ease some pressure off of the Indian government for starting to subsidize the price of petrol at the pump. What do you think, sir?
Well, I'd like to say that, again, from the United States point of view, they are basically putting the dollar's role as a reserve currency in grave danger, because now India, China, Russia, other countries will now be tempted to go in for deals in which only their own currencies are involved. Now, for example, India and China. If India and China agree to rupee and RMB trade or rupee ruble trade, then you eliminate the dollar completely. Or maybe you can bring in euros, but not the dollar. So, what's happening by this too frequent use of sanctions? And Trump is using sanctions. I mean, it's like popcorn or confetti. He's using it so. I mean, it's so often that the people are now very wary of the dollar. And believe me, I'm sure China, and certainly I'm sure some bankers in India will be looking at a future in which the dollar is no more the reserve currency. It's becoming very, very dangerous and risky to use the dollar as a reserve currency if you're not the United States.
That's an excellent observation, and I think we'll see in the weeks and months to come if how this sort of multi-person tango that the US is involving itself with is going to play out. Certainly, Mr. Trump is not using a playbook that probably even the US administration is used to, and he's sort of got everybody on their toes. And we have to see how this
Sri,
yeah.
I'm a little worried about the lack of information that President Trump seems to be getting. He has the belief, for example, that there was no deal to protect Gaddafi. And in other words, that it was on the cards that Gaddafi would be destroyed after he did the nuclear deal. I mean, that's irrational. I remember those days very well. And I remember the Libyans saying very clearly that both Tony Blair, as well as Sarkozy, as well as the United States administration at that time, tacitly accepted the fact that if he gave up his nuclear WMD, and he gave up all his WMD, he gave up all the evidence of WMD, everything, frankly, and that he would be safe. That was the deal. I mean, why would Gaddafi sign a deal if the outcome of that deal is going to make it easier for other countries to destroy him, which is what finally happened. So President Trump obviously believes that there was no deal to protect Gaddafi. Gaddafi just signed away all his WMD because one fine day he got up the wrong side of the bed or had a crazy fit or something. Now, that doesn't make sense. The President of the United States is saying something which is terribly misbriefed. And Mike Pence talking in terms of doing a Libya on North Korea. For heaven's sake, Sri, I followed North Korea very well. In the case of Iran, John Bolton is talking of Iran. Well, sorry, Mr. Bolton, you lost your chance in the Bush White House. The Bush White House had a perfect opportunity to ensure that Iran, the nuclear threat, was completely eliminated at that time. After that, I can tell you the Obama administration, maybe the first, even 6 years of Obama administration, it was still possible. It's not possible anymore. Iran has moved on. And as for North Korea, I'd like to say very clearly, I mean, Bush, the last time that you could have tackled North Korea was in the first term of President Bush. Very easily you could have tackled it in the first and second terms of Bill Clinton. These guys missed the bus. Obama avoided the bus. Now Trump is saying, I'm going to jump on that bus. Well, I can tell you, if he jumps on that bus, there are 2 million people who are going to die in Japan and South Korea. I'm not very sure how popular Mr. Moon and Shinzo Abe is going to be when their people wake up and realize that they're supporting a strategy which is going to lead to at least 2 million of them dying. Mr. Vice President, a thermonuclear device, which is very close to what North Korea has, is not some kind of a water pistol or not some kind of a firecracker. It's a weapon of infinite destruction. And the North Koreans have got that. They have got the missiles. So when you talk about North Korea as though it's another Libya, it only shows, sir, that you're being briefed extremely poorly.
Or probably he was hearing but not listening.
I have no idea, because it's scary to me that the president, vice president would say things that are completely dissociated from reality.
Well, we've seen strange things happen in the United States politics, and let's hope that reason and sanity prevail. Thank you very much, Professor Nalapat. We'll be back with more geopolitics in the days and weeks to come.
Thank you. Thank you, Sri.